Hi, welcome back everyone. I hope you've all enjoyed the break and refreshed and ready for this next panel session that's going to be focusing sustainability beyond the tailpipe. This session, in my view, is perfectly timed. SMMT have done a good job. It's going to be launching their 26th sustainability report on the 8th of July, the longest running report of its type in the UK. In addition, they're also due to launch their sustainability hub, so do look out for more information on that. So, as a lawyer for my sins, keeping up with the latest on sustainability regulation over the last 12 months has been somewhat of a challenge. If we can roll back to this time last year, I was on pretty much the same spot, kind of giving the view that the regulatory perspective, we actually had a fairly clear road ahead of us. We knew what we were doing, in theory. The journey was going to be quite long, it was going to be tough, and there's probably going to be a few stops on the way, but at least our clients knew where they were heading. Only to find that partway through the journey earlier this year, the SatNav, or rather in this case the EU Commission, decided to tell us that the route is being recalculated in the form of the omnibus package that saw a watering down of certain regulations. So a number of our clients found themselves in a real predicament. Should they stick with their original route, the one they planned, the one they've been planning for some time and felt confident in, or do they follow the newly suggested route? Not wholly convinced exactly where it's going, or in fact, if it will get them to where they need to be commercially at the end. What is clear, the automotive clients at this stage are navigating quite a complex landscape, not really knowing where they're coming or going. Regulatory shifts have offered some temporary relief, but the expectations of consumers, investors, supply chain partners are seemingly intensifying. Ethical sourcing and transparency are critical issues, and we've seen firsthand that those that have not embraced those challenges have found themselves knocked out of procurement processes. They're also running the risk of losing their competitive edge and the trust in their brand. On the flip side, those clients we've been working with that have embraced sustainability are unlocking innovation, whether that's through advances in technology, collaboration with their supply chains, developing a circular economy, or even investing in low-carbon logistics manufacturing. It's been recognised for a while now, and I really hope it has been recognised for a while, because it's my third year on the row, that sustainability is no longer a tick-box exercise. It's a business imperative. And so, without further ado, I'd like to welcome on stage our esteemed panellists to hear all about what they've been doing in their respective businesses, along with their thoughts on what they think will be needed in the coming years. We give them a round of applause.
We have seen a proliferation of sustainability reporting legislation over recent years that is now being simplified. Although implementation at a global scale seems to have slowed, the direction remains clear.
As well as safeguarding the environment, sustainability regulation can help the most responsible businesses compete. And that's an opportunity we really need to take.
Sustainability reporting starts with transparency, but it's also about so much more. It's about empowering customers and policymakers. Consumers should be able to make the right decisions for them based on comparable data.
Transparent sustainability reporting is critical to global Tier 1 suppliers like Adient, because it allows our stakeholders, including OEM customers, investors, and regulators, to understand the sustainability priorities of our company.
So, welcome all. Let's get things started. Can I ask all of you to give a brief summary of where you are on your sustainability journeys? We could be all day, but let's keep it short. So, start with you, Alison.
Yeah, thank you. Great to be here. So JLR have set out through our Reimagine strategy a real clear pathway to modern luxury with sustainability at its core. And our sustainability journey has got really three critical steps to it. So the first is to have a pure electric vehicle available in all brands by 2030, to be zero tailpipe emissions by 2036, and then to be net zero carbon emissions by 2039 across supply chain, product and operations. So really big ambitions, really great progress so far. From an operational point of view, we are 23% down in our operational carbon emissions. We are seeing some amazing process changes in the sourcing of our materials with our supply chain, so really embedding our sustainability data into our sourcing processes. And we also are seeing a cultural transformation across all of our employees to really have sustainability as a value. And of course, as we prepare to launch our new electric vehicles, those tailpipe emissions, which of course right now are a big part of our emissions, are going to start rapidly declining.
If I come to yourself, Vanessa.
Sure, thank you. Hi, I'm Vanessa from Volvo Cars, and we are going all electric. So we currently have 6 electric cars on the market. We have 4 more coming before 2030, and almost 50% of our sales last year were electrified vehicles. So we're well on the way there. We're also aiming to be net zero and fully circular by 2040 as a company. But we see also decarbonization and sustainability really as this opportunity for us to grow, right? It's decarbonizing our products as well as our own operations and really helping to drive change in society. So that's what we're aiming for, and we're heading there.
That's great. Thank you, Mick.
Good afternoon, everyone. For Adient as a global automotive seating supplier, we're very much on a journey with sustainability, and also, I would say, in the early stages of that journey, just starting out. We're mainly focused on 2 areas, trying to focus on the levers we can control. We're a relatively big company, 70,000 employees, 200 sites, and we're trying to look for ideas in our operations that are scalable. So taking maintenance people going in at the weekends, listening for air leaks and trying to drive that into all 200 sites. Last year we did about over 1,500 such projects and reduced our global CO2 emissions by about 7,400 tonnes or so. So scalability of those individual ideas is what's really important to us. The second area of focus then is trying to make sure that we have complete and accurate data that we can measure, hold ourselves accountable for progress, and also be transparent in our reporting. Around that data piece, we're committed to the Science-Based Targets Initiative, and we're committed to reducing our Scope 1 and 2 emissions by 75% by 2030 and our Scope 3 emissions by 35%.
Thank you. David.
Yeah, hi everyone. We have a broad range of sustainability commitments. They are milestoned at 2030, 2040 and 2050, and we publish the updates to those every year. So sustainability is absolutely a long-term strategy and has been for a while. But as with Volvo, we very much see it as a route to sales today and tomorrow. So for example, if we introduce a tyre that is very low rolling resistance, then it benefits the environment because of the CO2 emissions at use phase. It benefits the customer because they have less fuel bills. If we introduce a tyre that is low abrasion, then there are fewer particulates going into the environment, but equally the tyres last longer. So planet and profit completely interlinked.
Perfect, thank you. So question for yourself, Alison, if that's okay. How can consumers get a picture of the overall sustainability of a vehicle?
This is a really critical topic, and it has to start with data and transparency. I think there's so much opinion out there, in my opinion, and it absolutely needs to come from data. That, of course, is a huge challenge, and it's one that we're all on at the moment. But actually through that data maturation phase is where we are able to identify the opportunity, both for reduction and mitigation, but actually also from an adaptation side as well, which is equally as important. How you then turn that very complex, huge masses of data into simple, understandable, what the customer wants to hear, is a real challenge. In the luxury space, there is an expectation from the customer that we will take care of it. So I think that how you are then able, depending on your customers, sort of requirements, to show them the information transparently, clearly that they're looking for. It could be through, so we have what we call stories of substance, so where we tell, stories around particular materials or particular components, where there's that data, there's something really interesting that the customers might connect to. But then, of course, there is also the full vehicle level, it's that data, it's the life cycle analysis. I think we have to be very clear that there's a difference between disclosure and what we are collecting internally for investor relations versus actually what the customer might want to see. So certainly, as we are preparing for the launch of our new EV products, this is a discussion that's really focused on what is it that the customer needs to see. I can't sit here next to Vanessa, though, and not mention that when it comes to those EVs on the road today and those full life cycle assessments being published, I think Volvo absolutely are leader in that space. So I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, we've actually since 2019 been publishing life cycle analysis, so like carbon footprint reports basically for each of our electric vehicles. So now we have them for our EX40, our C40, our EX30, our EX90, and the recently launched ES90 as well, where we're publishing those reports. And those are great, really, because that really helps us to show transparency, to get the data, like you're saying, into a document. I realize most customers probably aren't reading those documents, but having that data there, we can pull that out at the right time, right, to the right customer. And of course, that also helps us to understand where are the big impacts along the value chain and how can we address those and which ones are bigger or smaller than others. A way we've tried to also bring that kind of data to be more tangible and perhaps more interesting to the customers also with our battery passports, which we launched last year with the EX90, so our big flagship SUV, that has a QR code inside the door of the car. So it really becomes something kind of more in your face for the customer. We can scan that QR code, and with our blockchain technology then, we have been able to follow the minerals in the car, so the lithium, the manganese, the cobalt, the nickel, back to the mine to know where those come from. So the customer scans that QR code, you can find that kind of information, you can find information about the health of the battery in the car. It really is a passport. Where has that battery been? What's it been doing? How much recycled material is in there? And we can obviously fill that up with more stuff as we see how people are using it, what's the interest, and how we develop that going forward. So there, I want to say, I mean, for consumers, we have a lot of data. We can use that. I see the advantages with the electric vehicles, though, is we can really have a broader impact, right? It's not just about the users, the drivers themselves, who, of course, get a better experience, but we really can have an impact across society, right? For example, with things like vehicle-to-grid charging, right, or we call V2G, where the cars themselves can store energy at times when renewables are fully available in the grid, and then release those at times when we're peaking in energy and help to balance this out. And it may sound like a pipe dream, and yes, it will take time to get there. But we've done a study in Gothenburg this year where we were doing that, and we see that it really does have an impact, and it both helps to create that balance, to reduce the CO2 emissions, and really make an impact. So lots of things that we can do to drive benefit for consumers and for society at large, really.
That's great, thank you. Perhaps actually just switching out to David, if I may. Obviously, it's fairly obvious where the emissions come from in the context of the finished vehicle, but in the context of tyres, perhaps you can share some information on that?
Yeah, well, as long as ICEs are going to be around, then tyres are going to be linked with CO2, continue to be linked to CO2. 1 tank in 5 in a car is actually used just overcoming the fuel, just overcoming the rolling resistance of a tyre. And until all electric vehicles are charged with renewable electricity, then that will continue to be relevant. But I guess probably the highest profile emission from tyres these days is particulates. So these are the particles that are formed as a function of the grip with the road. And therefore, reducing those particulates is particularly challenging without harming safety. That challenge becomes even greater with EVs, of course, with the added torque and the added weight of the vehicle. ADAC, actually, the German Automobile Club, did a study recently that found that I think the market average tyre was emitting about 3.5 kilos of matter every 20,000 kilometres. The worst performing was 8 kilos, and that's a hell of a lot of matter going into the environment. I'm very thankful to say, obviously, that Michelin was ahead with 1.5 kilos, which I have to say there, and equally, we've got mandatory thresholds coming in now with Euro 7 and with the United Nations, which we fully support and which we would want to be slightly more ambitious, I think, and sooner. But you have to remember, you can put the best tyres in the world on your car, but if you drive like a boy racer, then you're going to produce a load more particulates. So road surface is important, driver behaviour is important, road management is important. So it's all those sort of things. But it is an industry issue. There's a lot of research going on at the moment, a lot of sort of collaboration between companies and academia. Although I do feel there's a lot of duplication with that at the moment, and therefore I'd very much like to see that far more focused and accelerated.
That's great, thank you. Bringing Mick in now for me. So as a major supplier to the OEMs, how are you working with your OEM partners to optimise sustainability?
Thanks, Laura. I think all of us in the room would recognise that the automotive industry is an ecosystem made up of the OEMs, Tier 1 suppliers like ourselves, Tier N, and material suppliers. Adient is a humble Tier 1 supplier supporting Vanessa and Alison's companies. And we're very excited about a real-world collaboration in the circular economy space that we've done recently with Alison's company, Jaguar Land Rover, and our supplier, Dow Chemicals. As we know, Automotive is the third largest user of plastics in Europe, and in a premium luxury vehicle like the Jaguar Land Rover products, there is upwards of 300 kilograms of plastics and polymers. Inside that 300, in a, again, premium luxury vehicle, there's about 42 kilograms of seat foam. So we're a big part of that recyclability challenge. Together with Jaguar Land Rover and with Dow, we've created an industry-first closed-loop recycling of those seat foams. So our partner, Dow Chemicals, take recycled foams from end-of-life vehicles, and then, using some complicated chemistry I won't even pretend to understand, they depolymerize the seat foams, blend it again with virgin polyol, and give us then a polyol raw material that we can then use in our process. And they can achieve up to about 50% recycled content in that raw feedstock. We then use that and adapt our processes and our designs to use that material while still achieving the OEM design and test requirements. So we're very proud of this collaboration, and most of all the fact that it's not a prototype or it's not a study. This is a real world now industrialized at scale process, and I'm very pleased that it is actually going to be launched imminently in a real vehicle that Alison's company are taking to market. Our partners, Dow, are also very excited about this. They were recently awarded a Sustainability Leader Award at the American Chemistry Council Awards. They tell me it's the chemical industry Oscars, which probably says they need to get out more, but they're very proud of it. We're proud of it. And Alison, maybe hand over to you.
Yeah, thank you. I absolutely love this project. It's a project that's come out of our circularity lab, where we've been trialling around 50 different, a lot of them driven by, sort of the coming regulations, but that real trial by doing approach. And what's brilliant, there's many things that are brilliant about this example, but one of them absolutely is that it's not just something that's in pilot phase. Absolutely we need to be trialing, we need to be piloting these things, but we need to bring them to scale, we need to implement them, and we need to see them come into action. And one of the things that I think has been really great is we can talk about circularity, we can be talking about the materials becoming circular, we can talk about circular business models, but actually the circular relationships as well. Previously our supply chain very, very linear, as I'm sure everyone is aware. We wouldn't necessarily have had that level of collaboration with the material science providers, with the tier ones, and I think this is a really good example how actually when we are thinking differently, we're working together differently, we're really innovating with purpose. Actually, these are the sorts of groundbreaking industry first things that absolutely will be coming to a car in the not too distant future.
That's great, thank you. So perhaps if I can come to you, Vanessa. So you're all doing something on circularity, which is fantastic. But if we think in terms of reducing, reusing, recycling, what progress do you feel has been made in the UK automotive sector in this space?
Well, I definitely see now, sitting here between these two, I say, hey, how come we were left out of that, right? But we're also looking really to try to drive there and really take a holistic perspective, right? To close the loop in the different material areas that we can, right? So we actually just announced also with our steel partner, SSAB, that we are going to be using their recycled steel in our upcoming EX60 model that comes out next year. But the nice thing about it is we're closing the loop. So then the steel scrap that comes out of our factory in Olofström, that will be sold back to the scrap makers, and so we're closing the loop on steel then. So we bring the recycled in, and then we sell the waste back. And I think it's those kinds of things that we really need to be aiming for. How can we do that in a way that makes business sense, obviously, as well, right? Finding the price parity, finding the way to scale these models so that it really works for all of us. And you'll see coming out in our cars, again, I come back to that EX90, right? Has about overall 19% recycled materials in that car, which was a big step forward for us. And each time we're taking another step forward. And it's really addressing the ones that have the biggest impacts. It's steel, it's aluminum, it's the plastics and the bio-based materials. But again, I think it is the idea of making sure that we take a holistic approach to look at that and make sure that it contributes to the business as well.
That's great, thank you. And David, same question?
I think in general, the premium tyre manufacturers are making pretty good progress in terms of incorporating renewable and recycled material within the tyres. We have committed to 40% in 2030 and 100% in 2050. The real challenge can be technical in that you need to be extremely careful sort of introducing these recycled products without affecting other performances. So we've got sort of lots of partnerships looking at adding different biomasses, adding recycled plastic, that sort of thing. But really the holy grail is cradle to cradle circularity. So we want every part of a used tyre to go in, of a used tyre to go back into a new tyre, which is a whole different challenge. I would say as an industry, I think we are missing a trick for sort of jobs and growth by looking slightly too far down the waste hierarchy and not sort of unleashing the power of remanufacturing, which is potentially very strong in the UK. And yes, I would say that, wouldn't I? Because our Stoke factory takes an old truck tyre and essentially rebuilds it into a new truck tyre. But I'd very much like to see the circular economy strategy focusing on that a little bit as well.
Yeah, that's great. Perhaps maybe I'll stick with you, David, as well, and just ask actually kind of what your Michelin's approach is actually to the sourcing of those raw materials.
Well, in general, we hold all our suppliers to international sustainability standards, and we use the EcoVadis platform to monitor that. I have to say, the most complex material for us to track is the natural rubber. It's grown in tropical areas, so the potential there is for it to be linked to deforestation, which obviously we need to avoid at all costs. It's difficult. We have, just in our supply chain, we have more than 2 million suppliers in the natural rubber supply chain. They are on average on plots of about 2 to 3 hectares. They are very often very distant, so it's extremely difficult to keep a hold of. In 2015, we started Rubberway, which is it's an app-based system based on sort of risk mapping, supplier questionnaires, some geo mapping as well, and that's evolved thankfully to be independent and used by most of the major players, to the point where there's more than 2 million sort of individual geolocations mapped. There's aerial photography, there's on the ground support, NGO oversight. So to the point now where we can actually, when a piece of rubber comes into the factory, we know exactly what plot of land it came from, which is progress.
Yeah, so you can get a bit more consistent uniformity across those places.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's critical. Yeah. Great, and same question yourself, please, Mick.
Thanks, Laura. I touched earlier on our work with Dow Chemicals. I think the interesting point for us as a Tier 1 supplier here is the challenge between doing the right thing on sustainability sourcing but also maintaining competitiveness in a competitive tendering world, trying to win new business. So when we think of sourcing raw materials and sustainability, really what we're trying to do is provide a menu of product offers for our customers that they can pick and choose from to aid themselves in the decarbonisation journey for their vehicles and the markets that they choose to sell in. On plastics, we have assembled a fairly long list now of capable plastic suppliers that are ready and industry scale for the pre- and post-consumer recycling requirements of current and pending regulations. If I think then of steel, we've partnered with a company called Striga, who are building a new steel plant in Sweden coming online next year. And we have reserved 50,000 tonnes of green steel from them, from that new green steel facility, which is about 30% of our steel buy. So again, it's an option, it's an offering that we would then make to our customers. Unfortunately, many things in the sustainability world come with a price tag. So we have to say to our OEM customers, hey, if you want the green steel, we've got it, it's available, it's a menu option for you. You choose if you, the recycling plastics is going to be a regulatory requirement, but we're assembling a menu of options that we would then offer to our OEM customers.
That's great. And if I can jump in there,
of course.
I think we had this conversation a little bit earlier as well. I mean, at certain points we will want to choose those things on the menu, but ultimately it depends on what our customers want and how we can position things to our customers, right? And we're going to be pushing back hard for price parity as well, because I think also from sort of a logical perspective, if something is, more sustainable, recycled, whatever it is, it shouldn't be more expensive. We should be able to produce that at scale, at parity. But we'll continue those discussions.
That's great. I guess I touched on earlier about the kind of the wave of regulatory change, kind of what business coming or going. I guess coming to yourself, if that's okay, Alison. What do you consider the sort of the new potential regulations business should be aware of at the moment?
I asked one of my colleagues this morning, so one of my colleagues who's responsible for reporting, sustainability reporting, I asked him this, and he said, oh no, it's like trying to choose between my children, which is my favourite. And so he didn't give me an answer. He's very, very focused on CSRD, and as you mentioned, with the simplification. I think the things that I'm particularly really looking at are things around rules of origin, battery regulations, of course, end-of-life vehicle regulations, still in its final throes of discussion in the EU. I think, these are things that they're clearly designed with resource use and maximising circular resource use in mind, with sort of them being able to come from origins of, sort of green and clean energy. I think this regulation is great to see, and it's great to have that stability where it exists. I think the care point is around the time to bring some of this stuff to market, particularly when we're talking about the engineering life cycle. If we're looking at some of the closed loops, so the polymer example that Mick gave, is a great example of closed loop. Actually, if you think timescale for some of this stuff, 4-year development program, sort of up to 10 years actually now, where, a vehicle can be in its production life. Average car for JLR is on the road for 20 years. 35 years is this is a really long. So I think that, one of the things that those policymakers need to be aware of is sort of that actually what it takes to bring this stuff, timing as well as cost. As we've already heard this morning, the great news is that they're in listening mode. We're in that dialogue, especially with things like, from the UK point of view, the Circular Economy Task Force as well is really great to have that involvement from DEFRA as well. So a lot of interesting things to keep us on our toes.
That's great. And Vanessa?
Yeah, I think maybe if I kind of build on what you're saying, and sort of the theme that I've heard throughout the morning here is stability, right? Stability. We can't have things flipping back and forth all the time because we can't handle that in our industry, right? In our business, what we're doing. So I think with the UK, it's been great to have the ZEV mandate. I understand the need to have adjusted that a little bit. We all have, it's a bumpy road. We all have to make adjustments to what we're doing. But I think we've also seen the opportunities it creates, right? And even just looking at things like the ultra low emission zones that have been created in London, right, where that has really contributed also to health in the area because of the both introduction of more electric cars there that has contributed to reducing the nitrogen dioxide by like 54%, right? So we see the great impacts, we see the opportunities for growth, for health, all of these things, but we need that stability. And again, you see examples like in Denmark or Norway where you've had stability, where you've had support from governments as well, how that really drives the market, and then it takes off on its own. So I think come back to that key message.
Great. And perhaps yourself, David, any other further thoughts?
I think all eyes on Europe. The eco-design for sustainable products regulation, I think, is going to be really interesting. In terms of tyres in the UK, we're pushing very hard for sort of end-of-life tyre regulation. The outcomes for end-of-life tyres from the UK are quite frankly abysmal. But I think UK businesses should really be careful of divergence with the EU in terms of environmental regulation, whatever you think about it. Not sort of mirroring the EU in environmental regulation, in my opinion, leaves us open to be a target for very cheap imports that aren't particularly environmentally sound, and they will be cheap. They will undercut us, and I think that's particularly the case with China finding it extremely difficult to trade with the US now. So I think we should all be aware of that.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you all. So I guess we're coming towards the end of the session, but to finish up, can I perhaps ask each of you to please maybe sum up just one sentence or two, if you're pushing it, kind of in your view, does either the industry or other sectors or government indeed need to do better to achieve the aims of sustainability across the sector? I'll perhaps start at the far end, Alison, if I may.
So I think yes to all of it. I think maybe the angle I'll take is that one on the policy side of it. Just to reiterate what we've already heard. Stability, certainty, those are things that we can work with. Those are things that enable us to plan, to innovate, to grow skills, and to really build that within the UK, and broader. So, stable policy, and just also on that note, enabling conditions for those policies. So particularly, I think when it comes to charging infrastructure, still needs to be better. That actually underpins so much of this, because that customer confidence in charging infrastructure is also something that we really need to be there.
Vanessa?
Yeah. I think we see electrification's happening, right? But not at the speed that we wanted. And, we need the entire ecosystem on board. So, we've got a good example here, but obviously there's many more players in that ecosystem that we all need to get together and make this happen, not least the government support that's coming there. We have the investments, we have the technology, we have the products, and we see all the benefits that it creates, right? Decarbonization is not about degrowth, it's really redefining growth for a sustainable future. So I think to me it really is this getting us together across the ecosystem and pushing forward.
Perfect, thank you. Mick?
I think, Vanessa, as you said earlier, this is all about the end consumer at the end of the day. So my input would be that as a automotive industry, we should redouble our efforts to encourage global consumers to desire sustainable products, and that way create the momentum and the scale effect and the volume that we all talked about earlier. One example for me of why I would say that, I was in China last week, and knowing I was coming here, I asked everybody that I met, the importance of sustainability. And to a man or a woman, all they said was, yeah, it's important for the European market. So, we need that global scale, we need that momentum, and that's why I would say that.
Perfect, thank you. And finally, last but not least, David.
I would say all of the above, but I would also just urge both government and the industry not to be afraid of environmental regulation, as long as that regulation is pragmatic, as long as it's effective, and as long as it's sort of
built in partnership.
I guess all it leaves me to say is thank you very much to Alison, Vanessa, Mick and David. Thank you very much.